FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
They had to bring in additional personal documents which were scanned and retained by the Department of Revenue, which is a substantial change in procedure where the department did not retain those personal documents and personal information previously. So the question that arose from that process is, why wasn't the General Assembly informed of that? How are they paying for that? And what new risks are there for citizens of the state of Missouri in identity security as a result of this new procedure?
This is from the hearing this morning led by Missouri State Senator Kurt Schaefer. A lot of interesting things tumbling out into the open finally after weeks of trying to hide the truth. Joining me on the line right now, Senator Schaefer, who I know has had a very, very busy day. Senator, good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining me.
Good afternoon, Dana. How you doing?
I'm just almost speechless, honestly. Some of the stuff that has come out of today's hearing, I have so many questions to get to, but am I to understand, this is the first thing that I'd really love to get to, in following all of the discussion about from the DMV, from the Highway Patrol, what is the justification, what is the reason that was used to justify this handing over of private information to the federal government by these Missouri departments?
Well, apparently, and first of all, when we started this whole process, we knew this was happening, and we were repeatedly told it was not happening, it was not happening. You were right, we were right, and we now have been vindicated, basically, by the fact that finally, after pulling teeth for months now with these agencies and all of the evasive responses, we know that, in fact, they did give, at least on 2 occasions, the entire list of all Missouri concealed carry holders to the federal government. And apparently the basis was that they wanted to, the Inspector General's office, I guess, with Social Security, the reason given was they wanted to compare anyone on Social Security disability with anyone who has a concealed carry permit. And obviously, even if that was a legitimate issue to look into, there are much less intrusive ways to do that than to get the entire list of the over 165,000 Missourians that had a concealed carry permit.
Am I to understand, too, that some of this was because when you mentioned disability as well, how much does mental health play into the reason for their request? Because I know that
is one of the things that they were looking at. And we all know that to get a concealed carry in Missouri, you have to go through that process, and you can't have a mental issue, a mental diagnosis. And so we already do that in the state of Missouri. But apparently that was the reason given that they wanted to compare anyone who has a concealed carry with anyone who may have a mental issue.
Wow. And there are way other ways to do that as well.
Of course there are.
So essentially, if they found something, I mean, just for argument's sake, if they found something, someone like in New York, we had the story of this gentleman who was on anti-anxiety medication. And New York, they had a law enforcement sent him a letter, said that he had to turn all of his 7 handguns into the Amherst Police Department there in New York because he was on this anxiety medication. It seemed as though just based on their request for this information and the fact that they were looking at mental illness, could the same thing have played out here in Missouri?
Sure, I think it could have. And with the evasiveness in the information and their answers from Revenue and the Department of Public Safety, I don't know that we're going to be able to find that out. This is not over. We are going to continue to go down this road to make sure this doesn't happen again. We're going to stop it. And we're going to make sure that we've got privacy protections in the state of Missouri. But sure, I mean, it begs the question, why on earth would someone from Social Security, from the Inspector General's office, need an entire list of everyone in the state of Missouri who has a concealed carry permit?
Wow. And this, too, from my understanding, they gave them this entire list twice. And one of the ways they did that was to basically drop a disc in an envelope and send it through the Postal Service?
Through the U.S. mail. They put it's roughly 165,000 people on the list, at least at that time. It's a little bit larger now, but they put them all on a disc and sent it through the mail.
Because that's the best way to send such personal information like that. We've never had any kind of problem.
Right. You never get anyone else's mail by mistake, or don't get your mail.
That alone, and so we have really no guarantees that anyone except the federal entity to which this was being sent to, we have no guarantees that anyone else didn't see this.
Well, that's true, right. Or, what we found out so far is, it's gone out to the federal government twice. Where else it's gone and on how many other occasions, we don't know. And that's something we're still looking into. But I think the big issue is we knew this was happening. And we knew that it became even a bigger issue as revenue covertly changed over this process to gather more information and retain information on Missourians, that this could be a problem. We knew that they were doing it. And now, the whole debate about what they're doing and whether or not they're doing this, that is over. We are past that point. Mm-hmm. We now know that at least on 2 occasions, they gave the concealed carry list to the feds. So that's established. So now we move on to what do we do about that? And as we move forward in this process, obviously in the budget process, we're certainly not going to give anyone any more of the public's money to do this. And then on top of that, I think we have to look at what laws need to be in place to make sure Missourians' due process and privacy rights are protected.
And I want to get to what legal action can be taken on this, but I've already seen some pushback from the left. Some folks are saying, and I've seen some media figures argue in place of Democrats, which I think is awful cute. It's to be expected in Missouri. Some are trying to say, well, really the federal government's already had this information. They just, no, they didn't.
Yeah. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the guy from Social Security, from the Inspector General's office, would not have had to ask the Highway Patrol and the Department of Revenue to give it to him if he already had it.
Right. That's a great point. And then there are others, including, some Carnahan ops and all those folks who are saying, well, this is just a giant conspiracy theory. And Senator Schaefer, I have to wonder, is it really a conspiracy theory when you have the heads of these departments admitting this stuff in an open forum?
Right. I mean, anyone who wants to say this isn't happening simply isn't following the facts, because we're past that point. The list clearly was given twice, once in November of 2011, and then once just a couple months ago in December or in January of 2013.
Right.
I mean, that's established now. The departments have admitted that.
Right.
And we're getting from different department officials getting conflicting positions of they would never do it again, to the deputy director of the Department of Public Safety, who said if they got that request again today, they'd honor it again.
Wow. They just double down on it. So at this point, what action can be taken? Because we've had a ton of folks calling into the show saying, well, is there justification for a class action suit on this? What would you tell people who are asking that question? Because there's a lot.
Well, it raises a lot of legal issues. The DPPA, which is the Driver's Privacy Protection Act, which is a federal law that it makes certain documents open and some closed for state departments of revenue. It has enforcement and penalty provisions in there, including injunctive relief and attorney's fees. We've got provisions. It's a criminal provision in the state of Missouri to release that list. It's a misdemeanor. And so there's a whole slew of remedies. I think for us in the General Assembly, what we've got to focus on right now is making sure that we stop the funding for this so that the process can't get any farther. And keep in mind, we had the director of the Department of Revenue before the Appropriations Committee yesterday. And I asked him in that committee in the open hearing, obviously, we've had release of this information. This is very controversial. Why don't you just stop compiling that CCW data and giving it out until we can get this worked out? And his statement back was he was not committed to make that agreement at this time.
Wow. So completely not. And this is a clear violation of Missouri law. It's almost as they just don't care.
It seems that they don't care.
Wow. So what are the next? I know we have these hearings. I know there was a press conference just took place about an hour ago in front of Attorney General Chris Koster's office. He's or conveniently out of the state when this all hits. Are we to expect any action from him on this?
I can't speak for him, but I do know one thing that we're going to continue to do, and that is, if the state, if the governor and the Department of Public Safety and Division of Motor Vehicles, they tried to hide this from the public. They didn't include the public. Well, if they're not going to include the public in this policy decision of whether or not we're going to continue down this path, then we're going to do that. So it's our intention in the upcoming weeks to go ahead and have some hearings around the state before we finalize the state budget and actually give the public an opportunity to come in and voice their concern so that we know as we finalize that budget what the citizens of the state of Missouri want us to do on this.
Well, we so appreciate everyone ringing the alarm out about this. And Senator Schaefer, we appreciate your tough questioning on this as well. I know that there were some individuals who weren't willing to come before the folks to the hearing today, and I know they were threatened with subpoenas.
That's true. That's true. I tell you, I really want to thank you, though, because early on in this process, when you grabbed a hold of this and ran with it, and told people about it, we still had editorials and papers around the state saying, oh, this is all made up. This would never happen. The state is never going to give a concealed carry list to the federal government. And now we know it's happened at least twice.
Yeah, very scary. Well, I appreciate it, and thank you for representing conservatism in Jeff City. We appreciate it. We'll be talking to you again soon. Keep it up, Senator Schaefer. Thanks so much for your time today.
I look forward to it, Dana. Thank you very much.
Right, take care.